Hello, Global 9 students, and welcome to week 31. This is the first week of the fourth marking period, April 19th through the 23rd. In your classes, you are probably beginning the post-classical civilization as we've just finished up talking about the classical civilizations. Of course, that is of Greece and Rome, the Indian civilizations of the Mauryas and Guptas, and the Han Dynasty in China. And ultimately, we're going to be looking at the next phase of history. And creatively, it's called the post-classical civilization. With that, we will see a couple of civilizations in these next 2 weeks, which is going to be the Byzantine and the Islamic Empire. So let me navigate over to a little presentation here to help us with the rise of empires. All right, so basically, what's going to happen from around 476, the fall of Rome, and this says up to about 1500, but it's probably closer to 1450, maybe even a little less, that we'll study here in ninth grade. We will find that there will be interconnected trade routes that is really going to make it a more global world. We'll also talk a lot about cultural diffusion, but then, of course, conflict. You can see with this map here, we have a basic map. This is about the year 700 or so, where we see a little bit of the Byzantine and the Islamic Empire, and we begin to see in China, the Middle Ages here in Europe, and we'll kind of see how this rolls out. Here on this picture, this is probably a better map to show us these trade routes and how the world is going to become interconnected. And we could see some of the highlights here with the Silk Roads easy enough through Asia and the Indian Ocean easy enough through the Indian Ocean. But what we'll talk a little bit more about in these upcoming 2 weeks is the Trans-Sahara Trade Network. This is across North Africa, but it's going to pick up part of the middle, what we call the Middle East today. The blue bubble here is going to show us the Mediterranean, which, of course, the Byzantine Empire is going to be looking at that. It does not go as far up into Europe as you might expect, and of course, this is going to be during the Middle or Dark Ages that in this period of time. So looking at the post-classical civilization, we just get a quick overview of what's happening simultaneously throughout the Eastern Hemisphere. If we go backwards to the classical civilizations, right, we see that there's these basic civilizations of the Roman Empire here shaded in a pinkish red color, and we've got the Indian empires and Han China. And this goes back a lot less, pretty isolated between them. There's space in between the empires. But as we move forward to the picture we just took a look at, or something close to it anyway, we start to see a lot more civilizations being identified. We could see that the Byzantine, so in class, if you haven't yet, you're going to be talking about Justinian in the year 525-ish up through about 565. He will be considered like probably the last of any of the Roman emperors, more specifically in the Eastern Roman Empire. After it was divided, right? So we see the empire, the Byzantine Empire here. Europe is being conquered and ruled by a variety of different kingdoms, and we'll pick this up a little bit later in the school year. But here are the Byzantine, the Gupta we've talked about, and we start to see, China being a little bit divided. And again, this is around the year 500, so this is after the Han Dynasty, which fell apart in the 200s. If we move on to probably what will be the following week, is the Islamic Empire. The Islamic Empire. We start to see this spreading across all of North Africa. The Byzantine Empire is going to shrink up. This is about the year 750. And we're going to see, and even today we study this as a region because of climate, because of religion, because of occupation. We study North Africa and the Middle East together, and that's going to be what we'll pick up. But you'll start to see these dotted lines that is going to go across the Sahara Desert, and the other dotted lines being the Indian Ocean and the Sahara Trade Network. So just to give you a hint of what's going to be happening, we'll start to see how the African kingdoms are going to blossom in our next unit, moving along. And this is going to, and I shaded this white here so that we could see these kingdoms are happening in West Africa throughout the Sahara, and then we start to see the Tang and Song dynasty in China. Again, these are all happening simultaneously, so it's a little challenging to sort of keep it all going at the same time. And we won't even talk about the Middle Ages yet, but that's happening. You could see some of the kingdoms of the Franks and the Holy Roman Empire, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the school year. But a lot of stuff happening simultaneously, and that's part of the reason why we want to talk about it and show you through maps on how things and who things are and where things are going. Into the 1250s, we see the Tang and Song dynasty again. That's going to be here over in China. I'll go ahead and just talk about some of the specifics that you should be getting. These next two slides are going to show you what we should be getting out of the Byzantine and the Islamic Empire. First, that it is the Eastern Roman Empire. It is a continuation, and they will get credit for preserving Greek and Roman culture. Justinian, the figurehead that we've talked about, even though he was early on, he was probably the most significant to the Byzantine history, where he is going to have Justinian's Code, which is a collection of all the old Roman laws. He's going to sanction and build and get credit for the Hagia Sophia, which is the domed cathedral church. Today it is a museum. It used to be a mosque. But he is ultimately an autocrat, and he's in charge of both the church and the state. Speaking of the church, one of the things that you'll study this week and next is the Byzantine Greek Orthodox Church. So Christianity now is not, you can't just say Christian and refer to the whole religion. Christianity is going to split into two. By the year 1054, we will see that there will be an official split, but it really began with Justinian in the 500s as he was naming his own patriarch. So the Pope would be left in the western part of the old Roman Empire in Rome, and in the east we're going to have a patriarch. So this week you're going to be learning about some of the differences between Greek Orthodox Christianity, sometimes called Byzantine Christianity, and it's it's as it shoots off of Roman Catholic. So we now have to start distinguishing which part of Christianity we're going to talk about. And then again, preserving Greek and Roman culture, influencing Russia. We're going to see as far as north of is Kiev, which is a city in Russia, that there's a lot of influence from the Byzantine, and the Cyrillic alphabet's going to come out of this as well. The last thing I'll just show you to highlight again for this week's self-paced work, you'll see the Islamic Empire. You're going to do likely you'll do the origins of Islam, which is really just the foundations, what the beliefs are, how it got started. Muhammad in 622 received the message from God. Muhammad is considered a prophet, a messenger of God, and everything that he wrote in the Quran, the holy book of the Muslims, is a direct message from God, Allah. And this God is the same God that is of the Christians and is of the Jews. So this is the monotheistic faith, and you'll find out that the Muslims believe that they are a continuation. It's the same God. They believe that Jesus was a person. They do not believe that he was the Son of God, but they do believe that he is a prophet as well, just like Abraham and Moses and others. We'll talk a little bit about the expansion of the Islamic Empire, the Caliphate, and its conquest and conversion of people. So this is where it's transcending across borders and across oceans, where we'll see, and this is a new word for us, a cosmopolitan empire. This is where people, they kind of see themselves like the term globalization is a good parallel, where when we see ourselves as like more of like a citizen of the world rather than a citizen of a particular nation state. And you don't find that you have roots only in that nation that maybe your ancestors were from, but you have like a certain outlook of the world, and that you have these social and cultural conditions that create an attitude for you. And perhaps your obligations are more towards others. And it stretches beyond those whom you are direct descendants of or directly related to. So it's like this shared citizenship. And we're going to find out that a cosmopolitan empire like the Islamic Empire really will stretch across all of North Africa, throughout the Sahara Desert, and it will go obviously through Arabia where Islam was founded, but it will also stretch over into India and into Southeast Asia. And they will be linked with a common language and a common belief system, and they'll create trading practices and things like we've never seen before. So as we begin to look at the Islamic Empire this week with our self-paced work, you'll start to see how all this is going to play out. So speaking of which, let me just go ahead and show you what we have. There's a few things in the self-paced folder. Let me just go ahead and grab the folder itself. So likely you're looking at, and I just have a portion of the screen showing, but you see here's the screencast. This introduction to Islam is a very simple and easy look at our unit to just to show us a little bit. So you'll see I'm just going to scan through this page here, the origins of Islam. It goes back to Abraham and the Kaaba. The Kaaba is the cube structure that is located in Mecca. Maybe you've heard people talk about Mecca as being the the greatest or the most important or the biggest, and people say this is like the Mecca of the world. Well, for Muslims, Mecca is the center of the world, and this is where their house of worship is located. And through this very brief reading, you'll get an introduction to that. The second page that you have is a foundations-based note sheet that is going to show us some of the basics around Islam and the religion itself and into Muhammad and the 5 pillars of faith. Last week, I think we talked about the beginning of Ramadan. So some of our friends are practicing and celebrating the month of Ramadan, which is fasting from sunrise to sunset. And we'll get a little bit of a hint into what that is like. And again, to fast really is to be disciplined into being able to remember and remind yourself of the sacrifices that, in this case, that Muhammad had for Muslim followers. So there is a note sheet. So if you continue to read along, you'll see that the note sheet is the last page. And what I'll do is just share with you here for a little bit. So you could press play and pause as much as you may want. But here is basically our look at the reading. So if you're taking a look at this, you should be able to get a little help with our fill in the blank style note sheet. So I'll just bring it up to here, and again, you can press play pause to help yourself look at a few different things that we have for you this week. The last document that you're going to see is one of primary sources. And we like using these, of course, because this gets us looking towards 10th grade and towards the AP exam. And there's 3 different sources here, and you can see I use this green background here in a couple of them to show us what the document actually is. Your job is to answer the questions at the end of each of these documents. Fairly straightforward. You should be able to find all the answers within the document itself. And I'm not going to go through and read all this with you, obviously, but this is for what you could look at. You might want to add a page. I sort of noted that out because it just jumps right into the third page. And on this third document is a chart and then some fill-in-the-blank questions that can go with that. But it's all based on this stimulus-based document here and the reading. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email your teachers or ask them in class. But this week you're probably going to be doing the Byzantine in class and the Islamic Empire for self-paced work. Good luck, and we'll see you soon.